Please may we start to return to our seats so we can continue with our program. If you had not finished your coffee, your cup of coffee, your cup of tea, your cup of juice, it's quite all right. You can bring it with you and continue to sip at a leisurely pace while you enjoy the next session. Please may we return to our seats so we can progress with our day. We had agreed we would meet back here at 11:45. Those who are already seated, please give yourselves a round of applause. I think it needs to be louder to encourage those who are still standing. They'll feel like they're missing something. If you are still by the breakfast station, the coffee station, please could you make your way back to your seats so we can get the next session going. All right, as people come and settle in, I'm very curious, how many of you were in Namibia last year? Just a show of hands. All right, how many of you were in Namibia last year? Oh, that's a really good number. All right, okay. Did you get to do any sightseeing while you were in Namibia? Yes? What did you see, sir? Sorry? June 7. Oh, okay. Did anyone else get to sightsee while they were in Namibia last year? Okay, so let me take this moment to officially welcome you to Victoria Falls, otherwise known as Musatunya, the smoke that thunders. You need to experience that at least once in your life. It's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. But something else that you can experience as part of the whole group is a sunset cruise that is being organized by ReNAPRI because they want to spoil you a little bit. There's a catch though. It's a small one. You need to sign up. You need to sign up. So this sunset cruise will be on Wednesday. I think, no, sorry. Wednesday's tomorrow. Is that when we have the shortest day? It's Wednesday or Thursday. I'll confirm. Confirm. I will. Could be Thursday. Maybe Wednesday. I don't know. One of the 2 days. But you do need to sign up for it. And I promise you it's such a refreshing experience. Has anyone here been on a sunset cruise before? I heard a yes. Where's the yes coming from? Okay, it's one. Anyone else? Oh, you see, so you all need to sign up. You all need to sign up for the sunset cruise. And I'll tell you what you could experience. Has anyone ever witnessed elephants crossing a river? No? There's a good chance of that happening. And it's like a whole line of them, and it's fantastic. It's such a sight to see. What else might you experience? What else might you experience? An overdose of good vibes. An overdose of good vibes. But you have to carry your good vibes with you. They don't come on the boat, sorry. No, okay, all right. So I was just waiting for more people to settle back in. I think just give me a minute to check with where we've got our second session ready. We just need to check with where ED is. And once we have that going, we can get the next session good to go. So just give me a second. Please don't move. Don't disappear. Do you all have your tags? Everyone has their tag? Yes? Brilliant. All right. So just give me a minute.
And some preferred gliding through it. Some have explored the wild on 4 wheels and others on foot. Some have walked in the sky, while others have preferred walking on land. Others have gone deep into the earth just to discover astonishing beauty, while others have gone down in history to rediscover Zimbabwe, while others have chased the sun. Some have paddled through the waters with their hands, while others preferred using their feet instead. Some have dined, others have gone shopping. You too can. Vakacha, Shanya, visit Zimbabwe, a world of wonders. Zimbo. This message is brought to you by the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority.
All right, so we are ready to begin our second session of the day. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome you to the 10th Annual ReNAPRI Stakeholders Conference. We are running this year under the theme, Fortifying Africa's Food Systems Through Increased Productivity, Climate Resilience and Adaptation. Now, of course, as I have already mentioned to you, we are in Victoria Falls, Muswatonia, the smoke that thunders. And that's a very quick reminder to you to just sign up for that sunset cruise if it is something that is of interest to you. If not, you are free to visit the hotel lobby room and they will be happy to tell you what services they have at your disposal that you can take advantage of. Some may enjoy a bit of golf, here and there. Others may want to swim. Others may just want to relax. All those options are available for you here at the Elephant Hills Resort. Now, as we get our program started, we are in the second session, and in this session, we are talking prioritization of agricultural policies and investments through value chain analysis. Value chains have become a bit of a buzzword in a lot of communities now. Oh, value addition to this and value addition to that. But what is the significance of it? What role does it play in what we are trying to achieve? This session will be led by Dr. Tina Moyo. So please give her a round of applause as she comes up and introduces you to her families.
Thank you very much, Candice. Thank you. Good morning. I must start by saying I'm privileged to moderate this session on prioritization of agricultural policies and investments through value chain analysis. As Candice has rightly put it, value chains have become a buzzword. And with that, we want to then dedicate this session to listening to cases and stories that each country that has implemented PPVC is going to share with us. We will have a few case studies shared during this session, and I have in the session 4 presenters. We will have, first of all, a presentation of the overview of the PPVC, and thereafter we will have 3 countries presenting their experiences of implementing PPVC. However, I just want in the introduction to go through the list of countries that have implemented PPVC. Okay. So in 2017, PPVC was implemented in Tanzania, and there 15 value chains were ranked, with cassava and sunflower having deep dives conducted. In Kenya, 2019, 12 value chains were ranked. Coffee, fish, and beef deep dives were conducted in the 3 subsectors, okay? In 2020, the PPVC approach was extended to Ethiopia, 2020, and there 16 value chains were ranked. Within Ethiopia, 3 subsectors, soybean, sunflower, poultry, deep dives were conducted in them. And last but not least, Malawi, 2022, the PPVC approach was introduced and implemented. 17 value chains were ranked, with deep dives conducted on banana, soybeans, and poultry. So today you are here to listen to a few case studies of countries that my colleagues, the presenters, will present to you. So just to mention that, PPVC has been going on, you heard from the outline, since 2017. However, within ReNAPRI, PPVC came in 2023, and we also want to hear more about that. And to hear that, we will have the first presentation from Professor Ferdi Meyer. He will present the overview of PPVC and also give a description of the PPVC methodology. And Professor Ferdi Meyer, he is a household name, I think, for most of us, but I just want to read a few lines of his bio. For an extended bio, you will please go to the booklet, the conference booklet. However, it's important to note that Professor Ferdi Meyer is a farmer. In addition to that, he also uses his time as a director of the Bureau for Food and Agriculture Policy, BFAP, and Ferdi has been overseeing the implementation of PPVC in 5 countries and implementation of PPVC within ReNAPRI. Ferdi, may you please come and give your presentation. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks very much, Tina, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege being here, talking about PPVC, and we want to get right into it. So we have our own laptop here just to make sure that we can point to some of the graphics that our colleagues, that they will be presenting, talking on. So Chris, I hope the battery lasts, and otherwise we just switch over to your version of the presentation. So what is PPVC all about? The topic here, private sector policy analysis. And then we heard a lot about the private sector this morning in a great session on fertilizer, focusing on fertilizer and the role of public sector and private sector. And this speaks to the topic of inclusive agriculture transformation, a topic that many of you here in the audience have talked about a lot, written a lot on. And the principle is that you have a broader participation of private sector in the development of an economy. So you have private sector-led bigger investments. You have a transition of the economy from your primary agriculture into agro-processing, more value addition beyond the farm gate into the value chains. These topics are not new, and we see that in the National Agriculture Investment Plans. So many of the African countries have, in recent years, developed NAIPs, National Agriculture Investment Plans, and these plans talk about private sector's role. They talk about the importance of private sector. But what we find in these NAIPs is often there's a very long list of things that governments would love to do. About 60 value chains are listed. It's a wonderful, it's all valuable, but where do you prioritize? Where do you start first? Where can you start to engage? Where can you drive your investments? Where do you get the biggest bang for your buck, depending on what your policy goal is? And this is the principle how PPVC was developed initially, saying, can we make a business case? Can we make it market-led? In other words, market-led going beyond the farm gate. Business case, can we have credible numbers that show us competitiveness, profitability, not just only productivity, but adding to that within the value chain. Is it profitable? Can we drive these value chains? And then obviously our development case. Can we create jobs? Can we alleviate poverty with these very specific interventions? And we've seen the graphics a number of times. This is just numbers that IFPRI is producing. And there we can see for the low-income households, or low-income countries, sorry, there's about a 42% contribution by the agri-food system to the total economy. And within this 42%, we still have primary agriculture taking the lion's share. So primary agriculture is still a key driver in these economies. The question is, how can we make that profitable and actually look at beyond the farm gate into the traders, the processors, the processing of food products. If we look at the income bill of Africa, there's a rapid increase of importation of processed food. We are making gains, and we had those comments earlier on. We were starting to export more of the raw materials, but how much processing is there? How much value addition is there? Are we creating value beyond the farm gate? So the approach in the sense is really, it's a nice addition to what ReNAPRI is doing in the network on different spheres, different lenses. So we heard this morning about the productivity lens, the fertilizer lens. This has got a market lens on. So we're looking at a market-led approach where we say, what are market opportunities? Where do they exist? And we generate that through an outlook model. We look into the future. We look at the mega trends, the population growth rate, the dietary change. How's the world changing? How's productivity changing? Who are the big competitors, big exporters? Take that as a market outlook. We link that into what is required to the supply this market with an opportunity. In other words, what are the gross margins? We apply geospatial analysis. Which areas in the country can produce what? Where are the opportunities? Where are the networks? And then we want to understand economy-wide, where does the benefits lie? Do the low-income households or the smallholders, do they gain the benefit from these interventions within the value chain? 4 tools are used in this approach. The first tool is a geospatial tool. And there we want to ask specific questions. What is our natural resource potential? The demographics, the infrastructure. What's the current state? And how could this evolve over future? So that we get a geographical context of a country, not just saying nationally, saying, and we heard those comments also in the first session, saying how can we break this down in the country? Then we apply value chain analytics. Value chain analytics help us to understand the gross margins at each node in the value chain. And we want to understand the profitability. We want to understand the technology that's applied in each value chain. And we want to understand the market structure. So these are key elements that we unpack the value chains to understand how are the interplays of this value chain. We look at the multi-market model. And this is part, I'll talk about training in a moment. So this is where we actually specifically look at what's the market potential. We run our 10-year outlook, 15, 20-year outlook. Which direction are these markets moving? What would be local food demand? Where would it come from? Under a baseline, will we import more? Will we export more? How much local consumption will there be? And also then setting up a baseline to start the shocks of these upgrades. If we do certain interventions, certain investments by private sector and government, how can this grow? And then lastly, the economy-wide system, saying, if we do this, what does it mean for our population, for our development goals, for our country, for the low-income households? We put all of this in a process, starting off with your policy landscape and your economics, in other words, really getting an understanding. And one of our colleagues mentioned it this morning, is saying, how do you align with what's already there? There are many policies, and many good policies. Some policies lack just more articulation. Some policies require just a drive. Who's going to take the lead? Who's going to drive this incentive going forward? We want to understand value chain, the context. Many of these, as I've mentioned, NIBEs already have value chains that they're looking at. So we want to understand the context of those value chains. This is where we dive deep into panel data. We want to understand who are the farmers that are producing, who are the supply chain actors, who is contributing to this value chain. And then we get to a phase that we call value chain ranking. Now, the ranking of a value chain is dependent on a number of indicators. And these are the 4 categories right at the bottom of your screen. I hope you can see it if you're sitting in the audience. So that's the market-led indicators. we have inclusiveness indicators, transformation indicators, and climate indicators. So for each value chain, so we've got a list of about 15, 16 value chains, and for each one of those value chains, we create these indicators that are generated by the models. So a market model will give us the consumption growth. Then your export potential over the next 10 years. We look at competitiveness. The CGE model will help us with inclusiveness and the transformation part. Then we look at climate, important climate change. How sensitive your Chris, I need that code, please. I just quickly need to have it to get onto the presentation. Just the first one, the ID.
Okay. If you did a drop down, you should find it in there. It's the internet.
The Wi-Fi was also off.
Connect automatically.
Join.
Okay, you're now online, so you can join.
Just before we get this out.
Okay, and now pre 2023. Okay, I'm going there to pick it up.
Okay, colleagues, I think we're good to go. Thanks for your patience. So if you're South African, you're used to this. This is load shedding. You don't have load shedding in Africa, we have load shedding, don't worry. So just to a quick recap, once you've done the analytics for each value chain, there's essentially a ranking of the value chains. And this is where we currently, in these indicators, we use the equal weighting. And this is obviously something that we are discussing with the network, with the researchers, thinking together, does it make sense actually to apply a weighting to it? And that also depends on government goal, the targets. Which are the value chain that gives you the market kick? Which are the value chains that maybe are the strongest in poverty alleviations? Which are the value chains that you've got an indication, and based on that, the governments then make a selection of which are the deep dive value chains to go for. And that's where we engage in a deep modeling exercise, go ground level. We understand where are potential bottlenecks in the value chain, right from the market, export markets, ports, import parity, export parity, all the way down to the farm level, right down to productivity, fertilizer prices, application rates, efficiency. Those are all indicators that are done in the deep dive. And then you come up with interventions, and we use coloring a lot of times. We say the blue interventions are for private sector. The red interventions are for the policymakers. And trying to establish, to pinpoint where in the value chain, who needs to take responsibility for what, to build an upgraded value chain. In other words, a value chain that's more competitive, that's sustainable, that grows this economy into the future. And the last step is post-implementation support. So it's great we have our presenters from the different countries. So Joyce will be talking about the value chain ranking. So in Malawi, it's just past the value chain ranking phase. And Joyce will share her experience on value chain deep dives. Tim has done the deep dive and he's working with government, with the policymakers on very complex, tricky policies that they're currently working on. And Zena has done PPVC 2017. Government has adopted some of those reform, implemented. Private sector has responded to those. We've seen investments in sunflower, and now we're monitoring and Zena will tell you something very interesting, how they're starting to refine these policies in the process. Lastly, PPVC training and ReNAPRI, capacity building is very important for the network, for us. And there you can get a feel. We've got 3 levels of capacity building and training in the network. The first level is what we call ambassador training. This is, and the size of the bubble gives you the number of people that we are reaching out to in ambassador. A one-day training basically saying, what is PPVC all about? What can you do with it? Where can you apply these tools? What are the principles? The affiliate training, and there you can see the level of complexity is rising. The amount of time committed to this work is increasing. And the affiliates are our researchers in the network. So we have been privileged with 28 researchers from the ReNAPRI centers, in-country centers, participating in training. Now we call these, if you think about a car, the ambassadors are the people sitting at the back. They are the private sector and the government people. The affiliates are the ones driving the car. They give direction. Which direction is this work going? And then we have the highest level is the fellows. Very complex. These are the modelers. These are the analysts that go down deep. And they can actually open up the hood of the car and they can fix the engine. They know what the engine looks like. And this is just a picture that we took recently in our in-person training. So I'm going to stop there. These are the this is broad sense, the approach. These are the tools. And we look forward to our next presenters presenting country case studies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fedi, for that very good background that you have laid out for the session. So the countries, as Fedi has said, Malawi will present first. So we'll listen to the Malawi case, and Miss Joyce Minofu will present the Malawi case. She is a research analyst at Mwapata Institute in Malawi. And Joyce's research interests are in the agricultural policy space, rural development, and natural resource economics. Within PPVC, She is the Malawi team lead on banana deep dives. Please, Joyce.
Thank you so much. So, as you have heard, we from Malawi, we present the practical experience from PPVC. Basically, we have done the first part, whereby we have the results for the selection process, and then we also we have started the deep dives, and I'll share just the preliminary results for the banana deep dive. First is to take you through the journey in Malawi and PPVC, the progress itself and the experiences. So since commencement of PPVC implementation in November 2021, right away we started the selection process, what Prof. Fed was explaining as the value chain ranking exercise. So as a nation, we have a long list of value chains that we promote. But in this case, we needed to choose value chains that would help Malawi achieve inclusive agricultural transformation. So we had that activity done by researchers from 3 institutions, from WAPATA, IFPRI, and BFAP. So we had a team that was working on the ground truthing, data analysis, and also engagements with stakeholders so as to choose and select the value chains that we can do the ranking. So we, as you heard, we have 17 value chains that we were part of the ranking exercise. And the results were available and presented to key stakeholders in September, and we started with high-level policy meeting with policymakers. We also had a meeting with the key stakeholders in the value chains, different value chain nodes. We also met farmers just to get their views on the results and giving their comments that were incorporated into the report and made available to the ministry to choose for us the 3 value chains that we can do the deep dives. So in April, when we were waiting for the ministry feedback on the 3 value chains, we noticed that we needed to go and make emphasize on the importance of the ministry to be part of this process. So we had to go again and meet the Minister of Agriculture top management. It was a meeting. So we presented the process again and the importance of the ministry to choose the 3 deep dives. So likely in May, we got the communication that bananas, poultry, and soybean are the ones that we should do the deep dives on. So soon after that, we set up the deep dive teams, and from the researchers from the same institutions I mentioned earlier, and right now we are into the deep dive analysis, capturing data, doing key informant interviews on all the 3 value chains. I must mention that we have set up 3 teams, each team working on a particular value chain that has been chosen for deep dives. So we are into that activity, and whatever we share on banana is just preliminary results. And then we are planning that early next year we'll have the deep dive analysis results out and shared with the key stakeholders, and also go into the support of policy implementation. So on the final ranking analysis in Malawi, this is what we got. It's interesting that before I explain the ranking itself, let me highlight that the green color shows that the particular value chain has done well on a particular indicator. So if it's green against mangoes on one, it means when we rank the 17 value chains, mangoes were on top in the theme of achieving agricultural transformation. So it was on position 3 on market-led indicators as we go along. So when we go for yellow, that means it was moderately good, but not that good. And then if we go to that is maroon, not maroon, but pinkish or red, that's very poor performance. So from that list, we can see that what is interesting is that the 3 top value chains that we see from there are all high-value horticultural crops, not what we expect for Malawi case, like if it was just choosing someone to comment on the value chains that we have. We have the traditional commercial crop, that is tobacco, and then we have our staple crop maize. But when we see these value chains, they are at the bottom. And also, if we go to how we are subjected these value chains to particular indicators, we see that mangoes, academia, and bananas, yes, they are doing good even if we look at the climate indicators. These are perennial crops and they contribute to reforestation agenda. And if we go to mangoes and macadamia, we know in Malawi we have the issue of forex. These have good export potential. They help us achieve what we really want as a nation, to produce for exports and have the needed forex. And then on bananas, we see also that this one has a good import substitution drive. Because most of the bananas we consume currently in Malawi are imported, we're wasting on the forex that we have. So if we produce more, we would replace the importation. And then the list goes. So this is how it came out. We have a full report. You can contact the team for your own reviews. So when this was presented, the ranking exercise was presented to different stakeholders, we received constructive reviews from other stakeholders, from the ministries, departments, and agencies. This is how they ranked the value chains. So the question here was like to give us the 3 top value chains. They think they would help Malawi achieve inclusive agricultural transformation. So it came up for MDAs that the poultry was number 1, soybeans, that was most ranked. And for other stakeholders, these are private sectors and other players, it was about soybean that was most preferred. And then for farmers, they put soybeans. And we still see here, even if without using the indicators, like doing the calculation, I mean using the data and then the key indicators that Fedi was explaining, farmers, I mean the stakeholders are able to point out the value chains that they think would help agricultural transformation. So as I said, I'll just go through quickly on the preliminary results we have for deep dives. As you heard, we have soybeans, bananas, and poultry, and there are teams that are working on each of these. And on bananas, I'll not talk much about the methodology, but allow me to emphasize that this point at deep dive, we go deeper than the value chain selection ranking exercise. This one is more specific and targeted to that particular value chains. That's why even when we asked the ministry to choose 3, they wanted us to do more. But because of the nature of this particular exercise, we had only to choose 3 so that we have enough ample time to look into the matter and be able to provide the current and due state of a particular value chain, and also provide levels of interventions that the minister or the government can use in the national agricultural and investment plans. For example, in Malawi, the burning issues are to do with increased local production and processing of most of these value chains. We are underperforming when we compare to the world benchmarks. We are not doing as fine. So government wants to increase the local production and also import substitution and export potential. As I mentioned about the issue of forex, these are the drives. And also, of course, improved value chain competitiveness. So the current state for bananas, the preliminary results, is that at the moment we are producing very low because of the issue of banana bunch-top virus. So as compared to the past years, we used to produce more and even export, but right now the production is very low. But when we look at the spatial analysis, Malawi has suitable climate to competitively produce bananas for exports. And on our ground truthing, we see that there is large potential for all players, from the farmers, traders, and processors. And for those people that are on the ground still working on this particular value chain can testify they are able to invest more into irrigation, even at small scale. Others are into culture facility, propagating, are also producing clean suckers just to beat this problem of banana bunch-top disease. We see a lot of interest on the ground. On the importation, as I said, this is just to give you a picture of what is happening. We are importing most of our bananas, many from Tanzania and Mozambique. And when we went to the markets, the main market in Malawi, that's what we saw. We didn't book with anyone, we just like trying to understand. We wanted to chat with traders, and that's what we found. That the trucks are offloading bananas. And we managed to talk to the traders and their experiences. And from the other side of Malawi, we also witnessed those bales coming in from Mozambique. They were on the Basco load. So it was like really interesting to see that most of the things, most of the bananas, most of the demand in Malawi for bananas is made by importation of this kind. So to conclude, I would like to highlight the critical factors that we think require policy intervention as we look at this value chain. And these are preliminary, as I talked about, so the issue of disease management, the BBTV and other diseases. To increase production, there is really need to do something about this. Multiplication of the clean suckers, availability of them to farmers, and all that we need to do so that we produce at large scale and meet the local demand and also be able to export. We also think that there is need to increase access to capital for irrigation. Most farmers will not manage to set up an irrigation system because it's costly, and to boost up production that the plantation gives out fruits throughout the year, we need to have capital for irrigation setup. And also affordability of inputs for intensification of existing production systems. We've discovered that bananas are heavy feeders. They need good soils. And if it's manure, we need to apply enough for the bananas to produce what we want. So there's need to make sure that the farmers have affordable inputs to produce enough. There's also need for improved varieties and strong seed systems, as most of the farmers from our discussions, we hear them getting the seed from a friend or from a neighbor, and that is maybe 1 or 2 suckers. It's not enough to cultivate a good plantation that would help improve the total production of the nation. And also there's a need of training and improved extension support to farmers. I will not explain much on this. Many have also commented on how important is extension to improve on agricultural value chains. Then lastly is to explore opportunities in processing and plantain production. Right now all we produce, we eat as like a dessert, just like a fruit. We don't process it into a juice or something. So if we improve on the processing and also growing of high value bananas like plantains will really help improve this value chain. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Joyce, for that elaborate presentation about the Malawi case. Moving on, we are going to listen to the Kenya case. And for that case, we will have Dr. Timothy Njeru presenting it. He is a research fellow at Tegemeo Institute of Agricultural Policy and Development in Kenya, where he is the Evaluation and Rural Development Specialist. His research specialization spans from rural finance, rural development, and institutional economics. Tim received his PhD in development economics from the National Graduate School for Policy Studies. We are glad to have you here. Tim, please present the Kenya case. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. So as I present the case for Kenya, I think most of you will identify that sometimes you do research and top of your recommendation is that we need further research. So, so that is the case for Kenya. So when we did the deep dives, we actually focused on beef, coffee, and fish. And for fish, we realized that, for example, Kenya could replace about $30 million worth of fish imports by 2030. And combined, both fish and beef could generate an additional $400 million in ag GDP. But we had barriers, and one of the key barriers for both these two value chains was the cost of feed. And that undermined our competitiveness. And for Kenya, the other challenge was that Kenya is a net importer of raw materials for feed. So although we had proposed that we needed to look at the tariffs, one of the other recommendations, which is very tricky and very emotive in Kenya, is on the issue of GM. Because we can use GM raw materials for animal feed, but as per the time we were doing the PPVC deep dives, GM was completely banned, so you couldn't bring in GM product. For doing now what we could do about feeds, we focused on maize, mainly because one, maize is a key source of food for both humans and livestock, and we use a lot of maize. It's the biggest raw material we use for animal feed. And the cost of maize is determined by a number of factors, including the tariffs. And in EAC, East African Community, we have a common external tariff of 50%, so that if you're importing maize from outside the region, you have to pay 50% external tariff. And if you look at the prices, maize coming in from Uganda and Tanzania, which is mainly where we source our deficit, and Kenya is basically a net, we are a net importer. So the first place we look at is how much maize we can get from Uganda and Tanzania. You realize that once you factor the logistics cost, then they can actually compete with the Kenyan maize. And if you think of the non-GM maize, and we're looking at maize from South Africa, you realize that as a result of the CET tariff, the price becomes very uncompetitive. So it doesn't even make sense to think about that. But without the tariff, it's actually competitive. You can actually lower your cost of maize in the country by about $100. But then there's an additional benefit if you import GM, and I think here you're just showing the cost if you were to import it from the Black Sea, and then you can actually bring in yellow maize. But then this benefit is not just to maize. We actually had done simulations with both soya and fish meal, and the CET for soya is about 15%, for fish meal is about 10%. So the biggest gain, of course, was maize, and that's why we focused on maize. And just again to show you the importance of maize within the country, you realize that most of the maize we consume is for animal feed. I mean, for human consumption, sorry. And we only use about 12% for animal feed. But for animal feed, you realize that although we had done the deep dives on beef and fish, they are actually the least consumers of animal feed. For dairy, it consumes almost 42%, close to a half, and then chicken, another 40%. So both chicken now, you split it into both eggs and meat. And if you look at how much feed is used for those, you realize that for dairy, it's about 65%, and maize accounts for about 50% of that. And the same thing for chicken. You realize that maize is a big component of the feed ration, and feed is a big component for the cost of production for these value chains. So it's only for beef, and for beef it's mainly because it's produced in extensive production systems that feed does not account. It accounts for almost a negligible amount. But for fish, and in this case you're talking about aquaculture, not capture fisheries, it's critically important, although maize plays a lesser role as opposed to dairy and poultry. So we think that, yeah, looking at maize is actually important because it's not, in terms of the feeds, it's an important component of the feed rations. And if we can get the price of maize down, then what we are proposing in terms of value added, we can actually realize it by passing that benefit to farmers. So critically, when you look at the price of maize in Kenya and compare it with the world, you realize that after the shock, we had seen the COVID shock and prices had started rising. And then, of course, after the Russia and Ukraine war, again, we saw some spike here. And Russia and Ukraine crisis is specifically important to Kenya because of the non-GM provision, so that we could mainly we were importing good volumes from Ukraine, but then after the war, that market collapsed. But then you can actually see that prices, when prices started rising after the war, they basically remained constant, although prices at global markets have been coming down. So the trigger for us was that in August of 2022, we got a new administration, and the president is a bit pro-science. So among the things that he indicated was to vacate the total ban on GM. So this gave us an opportunity now to ask what would happen if we now combine the duty waiver, which we had recommended before, with an importation of yellow GM maize. And we are very specific of yellow. Because again, because we are high consumers of maize, if you bring in white, there's a chance that this again will feed into the human consumption market. So yellow maize is distinct because even if you mill it, it still remains yellow, and you cannot change the color, so people can actually identify it. So monitoring how it's used is useful, and it's a very cheap way of just ensuring that there's no contamination. So the key question was, what benefits would this bring? And among the first things that we see is that compared to the baseline, like I mentioned, maize is a significant, plays a significant role in the cost of, in the rations for feed. And this again, just reminding you, we had shown this earlier. that the feeds, this is the cost of feed in the cost of production for these particular value chains, and then this is the cost of maize in the cost in the feed production. And we first of all found that because of, although it's a single ingredient, but it's because we're using a lot of it in the feed rations, that would have an immediate benefit of lowering the cost of feed. And the biggest people who would benefit, of course, we are showing here that broiler farmers would benefit a lot, followed by the fish farmers. They would actually get almost up to 15% increase in their gross margins as a result of access to lower cost, feeds that have lower cost. But then we need to put a caveat here that although we are talking about maize, we could actually lower food price, the cost of feed, if we provide the same policy action on soybean, which, because we almost 100% import soybean cake. Sorry about that. So we import a lot of soybean cake. With the production in country is very small. And no, I think this. Yeah. Chris, I think you can switch to what you had. So we produce very little soya. So we are again importing a lot of soya, and again with the non-GM provision, we realize that there is cheap soya that is available in the world market, but because of that provision that we had earlier, we were not able to benefit from that. So first thing you see is that there's a big benefit to the farm, the producing communities, the farmers would really benefit. Then the second benefit that we see is that if we were to now substitute the 12% that we are producing for the 12% production that is going in for animal feed, and we substitute that with yellow maize that we're importing, then automatically that means that you have more maize for human consumption. So the other scenario that we saw was that we were now able to see some dip in prices. Just go back. Yeah, here. So we see that there will be some, just go back one slide. Back, not, that's, yeah. So we see there'll be some dip in prices. And, this is, so this is on the commodity prices. So if the animal feeds prices come down, of course, we expect that the immediate thing to do to stimulate production, and we are showing here that we will be able to add about 160,000 tons of product coming from dairy, fish, beef, and chicken, and that would translate to lower consumer prices. And I think we were very excited when we saw this, because actually for the last 1 year, our government has been struggling with that duality of objectives, that how do we lower the prices for consumers while maintaining or ensuring that producers remain profitable. So we see here that the prices of eggs would go down by about 9%, the price of chicken meat would go down by about 6%, and for beef and fish is a bit small, and dairy is also a bit small because of for fish, mainly because we import so much fish, so that although we see the benefit here, the import parity price still plays a big role in price discovery. Next slide. And then, so here, one of the things we're also cautioning is that although we are advocating for that importation as a short-term measure, we still need to go back and ensure that we can produce this in-country. And the scenarios we show here was that the best scenario is that if Kenya was still going to invest in increasing productivity, so that we stop being a net importer and we get to a point where we actually get some surpluses, then we have that lower line, which is the best scenario, because we're able to bring down the cost and ensure that feeds, both for human and animals, will remain competitive. And then the other scenario is what we were demonstrating, that we are able to bring the prices down. And then the top scenario is basically the business as usual. So if we don't do any intervention, then of course prices will come down, but they only come down by a smaller proportion. But then by using yellow maize and substituting the white maize that we are consuming for animal feed, then we are able to bring down the prices, but the prices would still be much higher than the world market prices like the US, because we are still inefficient in terms of production. And then what this means for the economy is that we are able to add jobs, and here we're just showing the scenarios in 2030. We did a projection up to 2030, and we're showing that we'll be able to add about $93 million in terms of additional GDP. At GDP, we'll be able to create about 48,000 jobs. We'll be able to pull out about 93,000 people from poverty, and we'll be able to reduce poverty for about 177,000 fewer people just by this intervention alone. And of course, most of this will be in the rural areas. That is what we see. The 71% of the people who benefit will actually be in the rural areas. And if you think about the structure of the economy, maize would benefit a little bit and livestock, but there will be a big boost in the rest of agriculture and agri-food systems. And then in the next slide, we can actually show the cumulative gains per year between 2025 to the 5 years to 2030. And cumulatively, you can see here that we'll be able to add about 342 million to the ag GDP over those years. And more importantly also, it's not just about the cost, but we also get to see benefits in terms of nutrition. Because people now have more incomes, we see a reduction in the cost of nutritious diet, bringing down the cost of staples, vegetables, dairy, and of course the proteins. The only thing that doesn't come down would be fruits. So after doing this analysis, we've been reaching out to government, and it's been a very heated debate. So one, we were recommending that we had a duty waiver that has now ended. It ended in November 6th, and we were asking the government not to end the duty waiver, but extend it to allow for importation of yellow maize. But then the challenge we face was that one, right now our farmers are harvesting. So when you talk about importation during harvest, politically is a very political minefield for decision makers. So they don't really want, the idea is that they wait until the harvest is over, then now they can talk about allowing people to import. And then what we've seen also from August was that we've had about 4 cases that has been launched in court to stop the government from removing the ban. One of the cases has been thrown out because of lack of merit, but then we're still waiting for those 2 other cases. But from the point in which those cases have been filed, our expectation is that again those cases will be thrown out. They will not win. So we are still engaging the government to see what else we need to do, especially in terms of sharing this evidence, continuing to monitoring the global markets, especially to make sure that whatever we are projecting remains on point. And also for the government, because now if the court cases are thrown out, then the government also must put in place the policy and regulatory framework, not just for importation, but also for production of GM in country. And we are happy because we've seen within the region, a number of countries are also moving in this direction. I think the one is Rwanda, that has already shown that they've already shown intention that they will allow for the production of GM in country. So this debate is currently ongoing, and we have not yet had a resolution. We've managed to talk to the PS. We've talked to the team that the PS has in terms of the technical department. We've been lobbying together with the feed manufacturers, and the feed manufacturers are actually in support of this measure because they bear the brunt of the biggest loss of business as a result of the rising cost of feed. So it's a continuing process, and we really hope that you can give us some feedback, and especially how to make sure that we can sell this to policymakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tim, for that yet another elaborate description of the Kenya case. Our 4th and last presentation is the Tanzania case. And the Tanzania case will be presented by Dr. Zena Mpenda. She is a ReNAPRI Research Director based in Sokonoya University of Agriculture. Her research interests are in the fields of agro-processing, international food standards, waste management, value chain development, SME internal competencies, marketing and market competition. And within the PPVC space, she is the Tanzania country team lead. Dr. Zena, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Tina. I hope I can use this one, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Yes. So as you've heard from the first slide, Tanzania, we were the first one to implement PPVC approach. So we are ahead. We've gone to the different phases. Yeah, as we've heard, oh, thanks. So as we've heard, we had PPVC has got 3 phases. Yeah. So the first phase is the ranking, which our colleague Joyce has shown, and then the second part is the deep dive. So Tanzania, we went through the deep dive, and then we are in phase 3 of the post-implementation activities. So this slide is just to make sure that I don't lose you. So when we did the deep dive, we went through the process as explained by Dr. Fedi. So we did the spatial context to know where the sunflower is grown. Just to take you back, Tanzania, we had 15 value chains, and out of 15, we ranked sunflower and cassava. When we got into deep dive, we had to drop cassava because it could not, when we look at looking at the different elements, we saw that it was depending mainly on one market. So it was not really worth to invest in, to be given as a priority. So we went ahead with sunflower. So in this slide, what is interesting with the PPVC is that when we went to market potential part, I don't know if I can, yeah, this part, when we look at the market potential, we were looking at the data. In that case, you have to make sure that the supply and demand figures are matching. And what we realized is that the data were not matching, but there was no platform or there was no way for the private sector or the associations to talk to the government and correct on the data. So when we came in and we provided the evidence, we were able to bring them together on one table, and we agreed to reduce to cut the numbers. You can see the red line there. That's where the original data before the discussion. But when we provided the evidence, we were able to cut down the number, and everyone was comfortable, and we were able now to make some meaningful decisions. The other thing that with the deep dive, as have been said before, is that with the market structure, we were able now to project, to see what we want, what is the current situation and where we want to go. So if we look at this number, they're very small, but we were able to come up with some investment proposals and also some policy reforms. And at the end there, that's when we say, what is the economic growth that we are going to get? So in our case, we came up with the recommendations, as I said. So the recommendations were from the market. So from the trade and market, we had issues of trade policy, because what we saw is that there was importation of palm oil that was competing with sunflower oil. And it was unfair competition because there was misquotation. Imported palm oil was coming in as refined, but it was quoted as crude oil. So the tariff that was applied was lower than what was supposed to be charged. So there was unfair competition. But we also saw that we have the market for seed cake, yeah, for animal feed. But the animal feed industry in Tanzania is not that much, and we could not export because there was a lot of oil in the seed cake because of the type of machines that we were using. And then when we look, so we had some recommendations to make sure that we rectify in that one. So the other thing that we saw is on the crushing seed, sorry. So on crushing seed, that we see that we have machines, but the capacity utilization is very low. So if you go to the SMEs, they have not rudimentary, these are the small machines, but some of them are very old. They are late technology, so we needed to look on how can we reposition these SMEs so that we'll be able to extract oil and then anywhere. So most of the farmers, they will go for an extension of their farms to get to more production rather than increasing productivity. I think productivity was standing at 0.9 tons per hectare, which is very low compared to if you go nationwide, South Africa, I think is 2 tons per hectare. So there was a room for increased production. But why is it low? We saw that there was a need for multi-skilled extension services. We have extension services, there are few, the area is big, and then you have only maybe a livestock extension officer. Then we need to have an extension officer with multiple skills to be able to address these issues. To be able to address their few, then if they have multi skills, it could be a better thing. There was also an issue of financing for them, for the farmers to be able to produce. Some of them were missing funds. So if we could link the private sector, the processes with these farmers to be able to give them some extension services or be able to give them some financing to be able to produce, that was another suggestion that was put forward. So, but for today's presentation, we said we're going just to focus on the post-implementation after the deep dive. So with the post-implementation, as I said, we were a pilot study. So we reached a time that in 2022, we said now we need to have some indicators to be able to monitor what has been proposed to the government and be able to assess and maybe fine-tuning those policies or those recommendations. So we did put some indicators, the market-led indicators, to be able to look at the market, what is happening. And then we also need to look at, once the reforms have been implemented, what are the reactions of this private sector? What are the spillovers of their reactions? So, as I said, we had recommendations focusing on the market area, that's focus 1. And then we had recommendation focusing on the processing part. And then we had recommendation focusing on the production part. Because of the time, today I'm going to focus on area 3, looking at the imports. Yeah. It's not moving. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So on the input side, in the post-implementation, when we try to assess or to track, as I said, we had some proposed interventions, yeah, and then we look at what actions were planned immediately after bringing the government, the private sector. We had the recommendations, and then these are the actions that were proposed. If I start from number 6 below, I see that the government say the private sector sunflower processing companies were distributing hybrid seed to the farmers. So that is one thing that we kind of saw happening. Then we have the Ministry of Agriculture also committing to providing seeds, committing to provide seeds, subsidy on seeds. We also see an increase of the seed varieties. We had about 8 varieties, and then they were increased up to 17. These were the actions that were proposed to be taken. And then we also see a collaboration between the government and the private sector in making sure that we have hybrid-produced seeds within the country. So we set the indicators as shown on the indicator assessment, and then we made a follow-up. Yeah. So this is work in progress. So we have made a follow-up a bit. So in 2018, the study started in 2017. So in 2018, we recommend the policy reform, looking at registration of the seed when it came to the country. And it was taking about 35 months plus 3 additional months to be able to approve any new variety that gets into the country. So we managed, together with our other think tanks, we managed to look at that one, and now it has been reduced. The time has been reduced, but also after they've been passed, they can do the trials, not 3 years, they can do it within 1 year, combining irrigations and rainfall. So the time has been really reduced. So what we saw after the reduction of the time for the approving or certifying the hybrid seed, we saw that there was a PPP coming in, whereby we have a government agency. This is the Tanzania Research Institute. They came in, got into MOU with 4 private companies producing seeds locally. Yeah. So the TARI, which is the Research Institute, they came up with a variety called the record. It's an old one, so they cleaned it and gave it to these 4 private sector companies to produce the seed. So that was a positive element, yeah. And then out of it, we saw that 400 tons of record seed was taken for multiplication. And it cost about, if you look at the total investment by the private sector and the research institute, it was about $136,000 US. So it was a significant amount. Then again, we saw between 2020 and 2022, we saw another reform, and where the government said they're going to put some money to make sure that we have more seeds. But then we see that the focus was the 11 billion T shillings. You can convert it into dollars by dividing by 2,340. 2,000. Yeah. We're normally missing on those numbers. But that amount is not only for sunflower. It was for sunflower, cotton, and groundnuts. Yeah. So it's a portion of it that was for sunflower. But then when we make a follow-up, we saw that the amount went to the record seed only, that we managed to get the money. And what the government wanted to do is to have seeds to be able to Thank you. Just the power. Yes, I'll use this one while waiting the other one to come on. So what we saw also when we were making a follow-up, we saw that there was policy reform on the fertilizer subsidy. It was a micro reform because initially the subsidy was given to farmers with small farms. Anyone with 50 and above acres of land was not eligible to the subsidy. So there was that micro reform, and then those who are doing seed multiplication with more than 50 acres were allowed now to get this fertilizer subsidy. Yes. And then what we also saw is that we had a number of other things coming in. We have the private sector coming in. We had new areas that were involved in sunflower production with hybrid coming out early. But we see a number of constraints that are coming in. They have limited capacity of domestic firms to do seed multiplication. but we also see participation of young graduates in the seed node, which is something that was not there before. We also see a limited scope of the subsidy in terms of input. It's focused only on one variety, and the private sector that are not involved in the subsidy, once they produce the record, they are not allowed to use the subsidy. We also saw that the agro dealers were complaining about the quality of the seed, but they didn't have an association or a place where they can put their claim. But based on this one, we did a bit of looking at what happens in terms of the income to the people, what happens in terms of the producers, what happens in terms of the seed companies. So what we see is that for the seed companies, we saw that the length of the release of the variety was reduced, so it's good. And then what we see is that we are expecting to have, I'm telling you, the technology today is making my life difficult. So we see that the seed adoption is still 70% on the recycled seed, but we're expecting it to go down. If we continue with this trend, it will go down to 30%. With the hybrid local produced, it's 2%, but we're expecting it to go up to 35%. And with the hybrid imported, we're expecting it to be going up into 20%. So these are the projections that we see based on what is happening on the ground. If I can go back to one slide, just to see what is happening in terms of the producer. What we see to the producer is that the cost of sunflower seed is still high, though we have the domestically produced. And now the challenge is more that we have a subsidy on the open pollinated variety and not the hybrid. So that's another challenge. We are continuing making a follow-up to know what is happening and maybe put up some recommendations. But when we look at the margins, if we are moving to the hybrid seed, we'll see that the income will move both for the smallholder and commercial farmers. Their income will increase. And we are expecting that, say, by 2030, we'll have more income to the smallholder because they'll be talking about selling the seed based on the quantity of oil and also the high productivity. And then that one will bring about competitiveness to the smallholders in terms of the margins and in terms of yield. So we'll have an increase in yield, and then we'll also have an increase in gross margins. Let me finish there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Zena, for that very detailed presentation. And I'm pretty sure that the House, all of us can appreciate that Tanzania was the pilot, and you have a wealth of knowledge to share with us, because every other country that follows actually learns from the pilot, learns from you. Thank you so much. The rest you will be able maybe to share with us later as the questions come. So let's move forward. This is a chance to interact and allow for engagement with the presentations that have been made. We have a very good team of panelists that I'll call forward. As I call them, please may they come forward and take seats. The first one that I'll call will sit at my extreme left, and we follow the seats going to my right. Okay, so we have a mix of private sector representation within our panelists. We also have government representation, and we also have a researcher representing the researchers in the room. So for the private sector, we have Mr. Elifadili Nsaningu. Please, as you make your way, I will read your brief bio. With their permission, I have a summarized bio. For the extended bio, you may read on the book. He is the head of operations at Quistec Farming Limited in Tanzania. But within ReNAPRI, Elifadili is a private sector representative dealing with value addition on sunflower oil seeds. You just heard about sunflower in Tanzania. He is a processor, oilseed producer. He also provides input data that is required for analyzing the impact of implementing PPVC within the country. His role within PPVC extends to identifying market constraints and informing policy reforms through the PPVC approach. Welcome. The next panelist to join us is Dr. Derek Trotsky. You may make your way to the front, Trotsky. Derek is currently the Director, Business Planning for Business Planning Strategy in the Western Cape Department of Agriculture in South Africa. He is also often referred to as the shifting spanner of the department. In this capacity, he is responsible for providing advice and information on strategic issues to the department and the sector. So we are going to hear from him how he has interacted with PPVC in South Africa. The third panelist is Dr. Rodwell Mzonde. You may make your way to the top, Doc. He is the Director of Agricultural Planning Services in Malawi, Ministry of Agriculture, where he is responsible for coordinating the development, monitoring, and evaluation of agricultural policies and strategic plans. His responsibilities also cover the generation, processing, and dissemination of agricultural data for decision and policy making. So you see, our great team has the expertise that we require today. Last but not least, I will invite the farmer and the researcher, Professor Fedi Meyer, to represent the researchers. You may sit on this side, on my right, Fedi. And his bio has been read already. We know him. So this is the panel, and this panel is going to assist us in sharing perspectives from their standpoint and from the interactions that they've had with the PPVC approach in their countries, and also how policymakers have actually, how they've performed in adopting the recommendations from the approach. I'll start from the far left in that order, going this way to my right. I have a question for you, Elifadili. The question is as follows, okay? We know that the PPVC approach models alternative future state of a value chain-based prioritized policy reform and investments that are introduced either via the value chain itself or partial equilibrium or ReNAPRI models, okay? The sunflower case for Tanzania is a successful case, we have heard. It is a successful case of upgrading the value chains using the PPVC approach. Now, a question to you is, what are the lessons that you, as private sector, have learned from your engagement with the research team, first of all, and also lessons that you were drawn from engaging with policymakers? So lessons engaging with the research team, lessons with policymakers. Get a go.
Yeah, actually, as pronounced earlier, my name is Elfadhil Ezekiel from Tanzania, the processor of sunflower oil seed. We are basically based on a central zone of Tanzania, most popular for production of oil seeds of sunflower. Actually, there are some lessons which we are learned from the researchers and also the learned experience on how we operate on this sector. Actually, we were facing
irrigation area to the value of about $1,000 million US is what we can attract by investing that $1 million. The only way that I could motivate that was as part of the wine value chain. You know, the wine industry came and said they wanted to do it, we unlocked it on their behalf. And that investment has actually now taken place.
I come from Rwanda. I'm the DG of Value Chain and Trade in the Ministry of Agriculture. So my question goes to our colleague Joyce and Professor Fedi. I want to know on how we can rank the value chain that belongs to different categories. So I want to know on how you define the indicators that can be cross-cutting in those value chains. Second, as a presentation that we got from Tanzania, and no, for Malawi also on banana value chain. So I want to know on how, if you get a discussion with some of on the segment of consumers on banana, because I have seen that other segments, production, processing, you tackle on, but on consumers, because we know that some farmers have the old varieties, and adopting new ones, you need to have a contract with some of the processors or investors. So if you don't know what market needs, it will be very difficult to produce other varieties. The last goes to sunflower. I want to know from the proposed intervention that they mentioned, there was someone on high yielding varieties, and I want to know if you can't look on how also we have the varieties that has an oil content, so that we can produce the sunflower oil. Thank you.
All right, do we have anybody else on this side? All right, I'm going to go that side now very quickly.
I'm Puneet from FAO. First of all, thank you, everybody, for the presenters. I have one comment to start with. I think we are gender biased in the forum. So organizers, please, next time, make it a little 40-60, please, so that we have a better discussion. Now, to start with, I want to know how a commodity like tea did not figure out in Kenya and Malawi. One, I did not see even on the table, on the chart, low ranking or what. Second will be, none of the value chain have talked about the governance structure so that we can bring the small farmers back in the value chain. Because there's a weakness in the African countries that the farmers falls off the creek, definitely. Good example has been China. 29,000 farmers of the tea industry, smallholders less than 1/4 hectares, have been brought back in the global value chain. All right? None of the studies have done this, so I think we need to think a little deeper. Third, nobody have talked about how to train these people to get their knowledge, bring them up to date on SPS rules, and trade facilitation for food safety. Final one, the big one will be that without them we will not survive it. Now there's specific questions. The maize projection by 2030. Ferdy will tell me always why we have only straight lines. Those days are gone. I used to do models. I grew up in it, my dissertation, everything. Now we have AI. We need to focus a little more on modern technologies so that we get the cycles. Because first, when you read economics, we know theory of rational expectations. Price lag is always there. All right? A straight line is never a straight solution in agriculture production. All right? Huh? No, lots of it. No. Recommendation for tariff reduction on maize. We know AFCTA is doing it now. None of us talked about AFCTA. So why we are against opposing trade to happen? Trade means exchange, export and import. That's what AFCTA is about. And that's his ultimate goal for Africa. So you want me to stop?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have not yet endorsed that kind of policy, or at least they are still thinking about it. So let me just stop here. I don't take much of your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we can do one last one. Sorry. One last one, and then we will have to wrap it up.
I think one of my questions has been raised by someone behind, so I should skip that. Then the second question is, you about the sunflower presentation very well. So I want to know why and what should that modality you people design about subsidy? And some are skipped, others are benefiting from that subsidy. Please enlighten me more and redesign that model so that everybody along that chain should be carried along.
All right, thank you. Dr. Tina, I think I'll let your panelists address the issues that have been raised before we wrap up that session.
Yes, thank you. I think we will give the panelists a chance, and then the presenters will also come in to complement. Thank you.
Okay, actually I want to address the issue about what are the varieties with the high yield. Actually, we have two kinds of the seeds. We have the OPV, open pollinated seeds, and the hybrids. Now the OPV, they are good in production, but the hybrid one are the best one. Actually, the OPV we're using there in Tanzania is from the we have two kinds of them. The Kenya feather, and also the record, improved record. They normally, for example, the improved record is around from per acre is from 500 kg to 800 kg. For the hybrid, we have the variety of them. We have the one we call the Hisan 33, that is imported varieties. Also, we have the Aguara 60 and the Aguara 4. For this one, the yield, the minimum start from the 800 kg per acre to 1.4 metric ton per acre. And also, this one I've got the high oil content, ranging from 32% to around 48%, the oil content. Okay, also I want to address the second question about the subsidy. You know, for the first time, we have the different arrangement whereby the government was prioritizing the subsidy program. But due to this addressing of these challenges, we know that the sunflower now is the important crop. Now, the government is launching the large program of the subsidy by registering all the farmers who are doing that, and also they register also the demand. But normally, this is focused on the smallholder farmers with the minimum acreage. Now they'll be having something like the 50% cost. That the 50% is being paid by the government, and the rest is being covered by the farmers. The same applies to the seeds. So I think that I've already all the questions.
Chair, there was no question really addressed to me, but with your permission, if I may venture into the whole issue about smallholder farming. From where we are sitting, there is an agricultural sector. And in that sector, there are different players with different needs, etc. And we are actually now in the process of completing a second iteration of the question, what are the services needs of these different role players? In the Western Cape, we've got from multinational farmers to smallholders to people with food gardens. They are all our clients. Their needs differ. So this is for me the first step in terms of support. But when we look at the market side, then there are only a consumer. And that consumer, doesn't matter whether that consumer live in a squatter camp or one of the rich places, or even in London, 60% of our products get exported. That consumer will always want the best product at the lowest price. Now, in our experience, what succeeded there is not to differentiate between value chains, but get your commercial value chain to embrace the smallholders and bring them, and in the process, things like SPS requirements, ethical requirements, all those things get addressed by the support from the bigger partner. And we have now, we've done now the third iteration of an evaluation of our approach in this regard. In the projects that we supported up until 2014, we had a 62% success rate. Based on that report, in one 325 format. We then made certain changes to our support. The second iteration was in 2018. We had a 72% success rate. Oh, we can debate on what is success, but that's a debate for another day. We are now completing the third iteration, and I've actually, last Friday, the draft report was available. It will be released next week, and it is another improvement. So I think I can confidently say that this approach works to make certain differences, but look at the value chain and make use of your commercial partners in this exercise. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think I'll attempt to answer two questions, time permitting. One is on Malawi banana issue. The concern was what are we doing in terms of the customer and other, customers and other things. But there was also another question on we want to export where and all sorts of things like those. Maybe I should start by this, that Malawi was a banana production nation before the bushetop virus disease. We had a lot produced, but we went down to almost zero. We had around, if I'm not mistaken, 9,000 hectares of bananas, but we have replanted less than a quarter or third of that. So demand is always there. Another thing is the varieties we are importing from Tanzania are the very varieties we are used to eat in Malawi. So the issue of varieties or whatever, I think does not affect us much. Yes, another issue is, to be specific, Malawi imports around 20,000 metric tons of bananas from Tanzania and Mozambique. So you can see how significant it is for us to increase banana production in the country. Yes, if we go beyond that level of national consumption, definitely we are part of SADC, we are part of COMESA, and lately we are part of African Free Trade Area. So if we are to go further in our production, definitely we are to go into export market because we are a village in a way. Why nothing was mentioned on tea in Malawi and Kenya? Maybe my colleague from Kenya will answer on her or his side. In Malawi, the question is, why are we prioritizing the agricultural policy and investment through value chain analysis? I think we have seen a problem that we have got a lot to do, but we have got constraints in terms of budgeting and other things. So for tea in Malawi, we do have the very structured market for tea marketing in Malawi. For your information, we do tea auction in Malawi, and if the excess is there, we go even to Nairobi or Mombasa to sell our tea. So as of now, farmers in the tea industry as such are not very much constrained in terms of how they can dispose or how they can increase the production in that area. I would also add to say that other crops, for example, in Malawi, you can ask the same question of why tobacco, why coffee, why macadamia. All these have got structured market. We know when we are to go into production, where to sell, at what price, and farmers make informed decisions as to how much they are to produce and likely how much they are to sell on those areas. For Malawi, I think that is what I can say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doc.
Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Fedi?
I think we need another session. We need like 2-3 hours. We can sit outside. So I'll give some quick pointers. But I think just initially, it's great to have these debates because it's clearly these are the things that are really at the point of decisions and investments. People have to make decisions, and it's not easy. It's not easy for anyone to make a decision what you base your decision on. So just a quick one, I think here on the indicators. There could be a different set of indicators. What we tried to do, we had to compromise because you need to get indicators. Just think about climate change, indicators for value chains. You can have the smartest indicators for maize, for wheat, for where we have great growth models, biological growth models data. But once you get into smaller commodities like a banana, mango, it becomes limiting. So what we try to do in short is to standardize indicators where we feel comfortable that we have robust numbers in each of the value chains to compare them with. But we did make compromises, and I mean, we look forward to comments on those indicators. I'm sure we can, there are much better ones that we can come up with. At this stage, this is what we have kind of as a benchmark that we can measure all the value chains across. And Dave, I think that speaks to your comment. Unfortunately, I don't have a golden solution to this. It's a challenge. And I think we as researchers are always challenged with this two-speed process almost. So what I can say in this process, let's say deep dive takes 6 to 8 months. We put a lot of people on it. There are like 12, 15 people, 4, 5 people working per value chain. So it's not like one researcher or 2 researchers. Big team on it. But this process also relies heavily on all the great academic work that is being done. So I don't think the one substitutes the other one. It's rather working parallel, working together. And seeing if in this process, I think we are digging out opportunities for further deeper research, where we can also say we need more, we don't know, or this data doesn't exist. We have to go and generate the data, or if the data exists, the triangulation. And I think that's where we have a benefit with different tools to look at the data from different perspectives. So I think there might be masters and PhDs coming out of the application of this process and some of the key policy. And hopefully this process can inform some of the key questions that need to be raised in the academic space, and vice versa. I think this process can benefit from academics. Lastly, Raveen, I think we can have a long discussion around modeling work. The quick link just, in terms of smallholder farmers, it's all about them. And if you carefully look at the Tanzania example, it is actually how do you link smallholder sunflower farmers into competitive value chains that have to compete against global production of palm oil. So how do you make them competitive? And we can put some more detail to it. And then lastly, straight lines, not really, because those are the averages at the mean. We run the stochastics. So we run stochastic simulations on it, and we can have further debate on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fedi. I think we will end it here. But may you please have lunch dates with the presenters, the panelists, and speak through the questions that were raised. In the interest of time, this is where we're going to pack it. I apologize for the time constraint that actually affected us. Now handing over to Candice. Thank you.
All right. Please give them a round of applause, and I will allow you to return to your seats. Thank you very much to our panelists and, of course, our moderator for that very interesting discussion. Now, as she has said, this is a discussion that I think can be carried out over lunch, and you are talking value addition of food in anyway, so, you know, you can look at your plate and see what could have been done better. Now, we will meet back in here at exactly 1:25. We have an amazing high-level discussion panel. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on 12. At exactly 2:25, and then we will pick up with our official opening discussion for this whole conference. It will be an exciting one. It will be a highly charged one, and I think some of the questions that you have will be very interesting. All right. Where is Eva? Eva or ED? To help me lead out our VIP delegation. PS, VC, please could we lead you out first? Everybody else, please could we remain seated for now, just a few minutes while we get our guests out. Eva, Maria, somebody to help me? If I can get somebody to just help guide our guests out. All right, and a very quick reminder that if you have not had a chance to register with Maria, please pass through the registration desk, register your attendance, and of course, if you do not have your tag with you, we do require that you have your tag with you every second of your participation. So please just dash off and get your tag as well. I will see you at exactly 2:25, 2:25, yes? We're in agreement, 2:25? Ah, some of you are not agreeing. I'll keep you in here. There'll be no lunch. 2:25, we meet back here. Ah, guys. 2. Not 3, 2. You're trying to confuse me. All right, please go and have a good lunch. We'll see you at 2:25.
There is a place where people live in all their elegance, warmth, and charm. Rich in culture, whose belief is connected to the awe-inspiring diversity of natural landscapes. Where icons are celebrated, history is never forgotten. A place where mighty rivers transform into majestic forms. Into lakes. Into valleys, into mystical mountains, a place where mountains transform into hills with great spiritual and historical significance, where hills transform into curves. A place redolent with history, testament of the people who live there. A statement of power, resilience, and ingenuity. A place where adventure lives at every turn. I want to tell you of a place
that will last forever. Zimbabwe is a feeling. Zimbabwe is a world of wonders.
Zambia, a jewel in the center of Africa. Offering a wide diversity of fauna and flora. Zambia's national parks are waiting to welcome you. The local Kololo people named it Mosi Oyunya, the smoke that thunders. But we call it the Victoria Falls, the greatest known curtain of falling water. In the wet season, over 500 million cubic litres of water a minute crash over the basalt cliffs, and columns of spray can be seen from miles away. Livingstone called the falls the most wonderful sight he had witnessed in Africa, and it's a fitting tribute that they have been named one of the 7 wonders of the natural world. Adventurers from around the globe are still drawn to test their mettle on the Zambezi's waters.
All right, how was lunch? How was lunch, everyone? Did you enjoy it?
A dramatic.
Yes, please respond to me. You said, ma'am, you said something? It was what? It was first. Oh, it was fast. Yeah. I'm honing a new skill in you. Speed eating. Has anyone signed up for the Sunset Cruise? It's either Wednesday or Thursday. I think Thursday is most likely. Actually, yes, it's Thursday. But you do need to sign up early so that they know which vessels they need to book. So it's determined by the number of people, the group of people. So if you book early, then we count you in. If you decide on the day, you get left behind. So those who are interested, they can just see Maria at some point. I think we'll have another tea break after our opening session. So once we've had that break, you can go and sign up with Maria. You know, and just make sure that you are on the list. If you then decide you don't want to do it, it's okay, but at least you'd have covered through in case you want to, all right? Because, like I said, you decide on the day, you get left behind. Forward planning, preparations, and all that. It's important. We're just waiting for everybody to come in so that we can get the next session rolling. But I think we have a healthy group to start with. Now, of course, we have been having a few challenges. That is a little bit beyond our control at the moment. But I must apologize to those who are watching online. Please bear with us. We're trying to make sure we work through it so that you also have a seamless experience. It does become a little bit frustrating when, you know, situations are beyond your control, but we are working to resolve it. So we do hope that you will remain with us throughout the duration of the conference and you won't give up just yet. It's just a few hiccups in the road. Soon enough, we'll be good to go. Okay. How were the discussions this morning? How did you find them? Anyone? I can come around with my mic and ask you. I'd be happy to. How was, ma'am in black, how did you find the discussions that we had before lunch? Okay, but not everybody heard you, but that's fine. So she said she thought they were eye-opening and that they would have a good impact on how governments go about making some of their strategies and policies. Who else can I randomly ask? Sir, you putting your phone away. Yes, you. I think I should give you guys, please help me. Please can you just give them the mics because they have some interesting feedback. Yeah.
Which was missing a bit. The role of African continental free